Hi everyone. I want to do a video tonight to explain my aha moment that I had with the narcissist. This happened last summer. It was in June. Um, his rages had consistently over the last like 3 or 4 years of the marriage had started to become more frequent. But last year, the rage was at its height. And what I didn't know at the time was that there was a developing opiate addiction on his part. But all I did know at the time last June was that he was becoming more and more rageful, attacking me more and more, insulting me more and more, and all this was happening in front of the kids. And that was the worst part. And I kept telling him for years, I had been telling him repeatedly, you cannot keep exploding like this in front of the kids. It's not good for them to hear this. And he would always apologize, of course, yada yada yada. I'm so sorry, it'll never happen again. And then like the last like year or so of the marriage, he didn't even apologize anymore or say. I mean, he would apologize. He would give me the fake apology, but he he wouldn't even say it's not going to happen again because we both knew it was going to keep happening. So this particular night in June, he asked me to come lay in bed with him and tickle his back. He had this thing with being tickled. So I'm laying in bed with him, tickling his back, and we had the TV on, and we were kind of chit chatting, and he suggests that maybe we should take um a trip for our anniversary. So we were talking about places that we could possibly go. And I thought we were both thinking like of places that we had never been before. And he suggested Las Vegas, and I was open to that idea. I'd heard, Las Vegas is a really fun trip. And then I suggested a mountain vacation. And I said that I was interested in going to Colorado. And he asked me if I was interested in skiing. And I said, well, no. I said, I'm not really, I don't think I'd really be into skiing. I'd be too afraid of breaking a leg or something. But I would be interested. He said, well, what else is there to do? And I said, well, I don't know. I'd have to research Colorado. I really don't know all what's out there that's touristy. I'd have to look into it and see. And he starts kind of getting belligerent with me. Well, what the fuck else are you going to go to Colorado for other than skiing? And I said, well, I'm sure the people that live in Colorado do lots of other fun stuff besides skiing. And then we start getting in this whole tangle about what else there is to do in Colorado besides skiing. And then he starts telling me what a dumb idea it was for me to suggest that. And so I'm pretty insulted at this point. So, but we continue on with the conversation, and then he starts up with, and he had been doing this thing also. You don't even know me. You don't know me. Why would I want to go to the mountains? Because I had suggested that one of the other things we could do in the mountains besides ski is go on like a mountain tour, like a mountain hike. And he says, I hate being in the sun. Why would I want to do that? And he's saying what a dumb idea that was. And so I started to get up like I was going to leave the room. And then he's like, wait. And he's like grabbing me, to pull me back into the bed. And he's like, wait, why are you leaving? And I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and be insulted. You didn't have to say that my idea was dumb. And then, of course, he does that thing that they do where he turns it all around and I'm the one who's insensitive for suggesting that we go someplace that's going to be all outdoor activity. So then we start getting in this argument about it started out trying to plan a romantic getaway of all things. So he's getting louder and louder, and the kids were like right in the next room. I think my daughter was sleeping, but my son was still awake. And so I suggested we go sit in the office, so we could go. That room was a little bit further away. The kids were laying on the sofa in front of the TV in the living room, and our bedroom was like right next to the living room. So I figured if we went in the office and shut the door, they wouldn't be able to hear so much. So we go in there, and the whole time we're like walking through the room where the kids are, and he just keeps going and keeps going. And I'm like, okay, let's go in the office. Let's go in the office so we can shut the door, and discuss without them having to hear. And so I go down the hallway and I go in there and I'm standing in the computer room, and it was like the most bizarre thing. Like he wouldn't go into the room. Like he stands kind of like he was still kind of in the hallway, and he puts his arms up like on either side of the doorway, and it was just the most bizarre thing. And I didn't get at the time, I think what he was trying to do, well, he was like blocking me in there so I couldn't leave, because sometimes during like arguments he would just fly into such a rage. I would just take off. I would just leave and go for a ride so he could just cool off and we could just have a little break from each other. And so he was blocking the doorway, I think, so I couldn't leave. But my aim was to shut the door so the kids couldn't hear, because it was pointless for us to leave the door open. They were just going to hear the whole argument. So I'm motioning to him and I'm like, come in here, come in here. I want to shut the door so the kids can't hear. So he finally steps into the room and he goes and sits in the chair by the desk. And I'm standing in front of him, and he had just gotten finished doing this whole thing about how I don't know him and I don't take any interest in him or what he wants. Why does everything we do have to be what I want, which is completely untrue. And I'll do other videos about that. I'm not going to get into it right now. But he even started griping about a beach vacation we had planned for August of last summer. And he hates the beach. Why would I book a trip to the beach? And it was the most bizarre thing, because he was the one who had suggested that I book that trip to the beach. And I had even said, like, are you sure you want me to do that? Because you hate the beach. You're always saying how you hate the beach. You hate being out in the sun at the beach. It's so hot and you sunburn so easy. And I even asked him, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" And he was like, "Yeah, it'll be fun. We'll invite these other two families that we hung out with." He was like, "We'll get like a 3-bedroom condo. It'll be fun." So I did. I booked it on his suggestion. And then here we are a few weeks later, and he's yelling at me about how selfish I am for booking a trip to the beach. And so I called him out on it. I was like, "You're the one who suggested it." It's like I wasn't even going to mention the beach this year because you always complain about how hot it is and you don't like being in the sun. You were the one who said that I should book the trip and invite the 2 other families. So he kind of backed off of that one because he realized I had him cornered on that. He couldn't explain his way out of that. It was his idea. So then he moves on, you know, what's wrong with me and how come I'm not taking an interest in anything he wants to do or anything he's interested in. And this was before I knew anything about projection. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, that sounds a lot like what he does to me. He takes no interest in me. He's never interested in hearing anything I have to say. In fact, he interrupts me and pretty much shuts me down anytime I try to start a conversation with him about something I'm interested in. So, we're in the office, and I said, look, I said, I stopped talking to you about the deep stuff a long time ago because I got sick of being put down and insulted every time I expressed a thought or every time I try to talk about something that I'm interested in. So I stopped talking to you. And I said, honestly, I said, I don't think you like me. I don't think you like me as a person. We don't seem to have much in common anymore. And he says to me, you're saying I'm a horrible person? And so then the argument starts revolving around that. And I'm like, no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, I don't think you like me. You seem to act like you don't like me. You insult me and put me down every time I express an independent thought. And the argument spins out of control. He starts just yelling at me about how selfish I am, how inconsiderate I am, and insensitive I am, and how I don't pay attention to anything he is interested in. And, I just let him go. I just give up at this point, and I'm just waiting for him to finish his tirade. So I end up sitting on this table in there it was like this kind of long table, and on one side of the table we had our printer. And so I'm sitting on the other side of the table, and it's like up against the wall. So I'm like leaning back and I'm resting my back on the wall, and I'm just waiting for him to finish his narc rage attack. So he's just going on and insulting me and saying, what is this stupid act that you're doing? I know you're smarter than this. And why are you acting so stupid? And it was at this moment, I'm like, he's just standing there yelling random insults at me. And I start thinking to myself, this is not normal. This is not like typical, like, marriage arguing. Like, some arguing is normal in a marriage, but this is off the charts. This is not normal. He is not normal. There is something wrong with him. And I was getting so frustrated because I just wanted him to shut the fuck up. I even screamed, shut the fuck up at him, and he still would not shut the fuck up. So I'm just waiting for the rage to finish so I can leave the room because he's got the doorway blocked, so I can't leave. So I'm just sitting there and I'm getting so frustrated, and I got my hands on top of my head, and I think I was even lightly tapping the back of my head up against the wall because I was so frustrated. And finally I screamed out at him, there is something wrong with you. And he screamed back at me, no, there's something wrong with you. And then he screamed a few more insults at me. And then he did what he always did when he would finish his rage, and then he'd waltz off, get in bed, and go right to sleep. And then I would be like all full of adrenaline and cortisol, and I wouldn't be able to go to sleep. So I'd like either go for a ride or pace up and down. On this particular night, I think I kind of paced back and forth, smoked a few cigarettes out on the patio, and the whole time, after it happens, I got like the arguments just going on and on in my head. And I'm just trying to figure out what the fuck just happened. One minute we're trying to plan a romantic getaway, and the next minute he's screaming at me how stupid and insensitive I am because I suggested we go on a mountain hike. How the fuck am I supposed to know he doesn't like a mountain hike? Neither one of us has ever been on one. So, needless to say, I didn't get a lot of sleep that night, and the next day at work, I just felt awful. I felt like I was like getting over the flu because I was running on about like maybe 3 hours of sleep, if that. And so I come home after work. My son ended up having a couple of friends over to sleep over. And I, at this point, I don't even think my husband and I had spoken the whole day. And, cause he was sleeping still when I left for work. So, at some point that night, we start talking. He gives me the fake apology, and the fake, I don't know why I keep doing that. And it almost sounded like robotic and creepy, like there was very little feeling in that apology. And so we're talking about it, and I'm like, look, and I'd been telling him this for years. These explosions have to stop. It is not good for the kids to keep hearing this. It's very, very, very bad. So I said, if it doesn't stop, I'm not going to stay and keep putting up with it. So then he starts an argument with me that I'm dangling divorce over his head, and that's a cruel thing to do. So then he starts arguing with me about that. So I'm like, we cannot do this. We cannot do this now. Our son has two friends over at the house. We cannot get into one of these big wicked fights in front of our son's friends. So we end up out on the patio, and we kept it quiet, and we're talking. And I'm like, you have got to get it under control. What the hell is going on? And so then he starts doing this. I swear to God, it was such bad acting. It was like some Lifetime Network B movie. He is like, he could make himself cry. He can make himself cry if he feels like he needs to. If he's backed into a corner and he doesn't feel like he has any other route out of it, he'll cry. So he's crying and he's saying, "Oh, I can't believe I'm crying. I'm stronger than this." And he's telling me how stressed out he is, that he's so scared he's going to lose his job, and that, because at the time I was part-time so that I could spend more time with the kids. And, he's saying, in order for us to be able to maintain this lifestyle, I have to have my job. And I'm so scared that because he was in sales, so he says, if I don't meet my quota, they're going to fire me, and I'm so scared of losing my job, and then I won't be able to find another one, and it's just so much pressure. And he's like, it was just such bad acting, like it was creeping me out. I could tell how fake he was being, and it was disturbing me. But I played along, and I was like, look, you have to find some other kind of way to handle your stress, because what you've been doing ain't working. And this is affecting our kids very negatively. We cannot keep having these fights like this. So we talked on the patio for like about 2 hours. And that was the night I realized, like, there is really something wrong with him. And I really started watching him. Just, I tell people it was like with a whole new set of eyes. Like, watching him more as like an outside, like a third party, and not being so emotionally invested. And what I didn't realize what was going on, I think, was I had already started to detach from him. And last summer, it happened very quickly. I was just detaching from him because he was just so impossible to reach. And the fights kept going, but that particular night, that was my aha moment, when I realized, like, there is something wrong, and I'm going to figure out what it is. I got to figure out what's wrong with my husband, because this isn't right. This is not right. and I can't keep living like this. I'm miserable. And that's when I found those books by Patricia Evans that I've been reading in my other videos. I started off with her book, The Verbally Abusive Man. And then I read, there's 4 books in the series. I read 3 of them. The Verbally Abusive Man, The Verbally Abusive Relationship, and Controlling People. And that just opened my eyes even more, because I saw that I finally saw my marriage and admitted the truth about my marriage, that I was in an abusive marriage. And even though he wasn't hitting me, I felt like just the emotional abuse, the verbal abuse, and what I didn't even realize at the time was sexual abuse. The manipulation, the gaslighting, the lying, the lies I would catch him in. I couldn't deny it anymore. And I finally had to really sit down and ask myself, do I really, really want to spend the rest of my life with this man? And at the point that this particular argument happened, I still was holding on to the last shred of hope that I could save my marriage. I really didn't want to go through a messy divorce, but ultimately I realized that he's not going to change, and there was nothing I could do. There was no way that I could alter my behavior to make him want to change, because he doesn't think he has a problem. I even asked him about going to a counselor, and he said no. Of course he said no. I pretty much expected that. I started seeing a counselor though, and that helped a lot. I still see her, and that's been helpful. And the books, and then I ended up finding the whole YouTube community. But I'll get into that in later videos. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here for now, and thank you so much for listening. Good night.